Hello all, James here, and if you can hear rain in the background, I'm sorry, but I haven't got time to sort of wait anymore. I've got to rush off in a bit. WWE WrestleMania 43, it looks like is going to be going to Saudi Arabia in 2027. Now, this has been something that's been rumoured for quite a while now, but we're not really sure whether there'll be just one WrestleMania domestically and then a second one in Saudi Arabia, which has been rumoured, kind of like the Royal Rumble and the Greatest Royal Rumble in 2018, but we'll get back to that in a bit. All we know at the moment is that Turki al-Sheikh, he is a Saudi Arabian advisor, one of the most powerful men in the country. He's currently working with TKO to start a boxing league, and in the process he's tried to destroy the Ali Act, which was designed to protect boxers' rights and basically suppress journalistic freedom by buying the Ring magazine, the historic Ring magazine, and denying access to anybody critical of the promotion or the Saudi government. He did a Snapchat live where he made this announcement. Jeez, that rain's going. I'm just going to have to plough through. This is upsetting wrestling fans for a number of reasons, but aside from the glaring human rights violations such as the suppressing of freedom or of expression, and then including targeting surveillance and arresting and eliminating journalists or other dissenting voices, and then there's of course gender equality and producing fossil fuels at an accelerated rate, and poor migrant rights and kangaroo courts and unfair trials and publicly hanging prisoners from cranes at a rate not seen in decades. It is once again confirming that TKO doesn't give a rat's ass about anything apart from money, basically. Not domestic fans or even long-time pro wrestling fans and strongholds like the UK that have been clamouring for a WrestleMania or even a SummerSlam ever since 1992. And I'm sorry, but Clash at the Castle just isn't the same, guys. Now, TKO is money. That's all they care about is the bottom line here. Now, this is abundantly clear with their selling the WrestleMania event to Saudi Arabia. Now, TKO are a business, of course, they are going to be money driven, that's obvious, but there's a wide chasm of difference between making a profit for the benefit of themselves and the WWE shareholders and maybe even the fans as well, and what TKO are doing now, which is not only willingly helping Saudi Arabia's propaganda campaign by glossing over their glaring human rights abuses via sports washing, but also they're booking shows or even eliminating shows like live events, for example, to the detriment of the company and even the wrestlers, because now money is not the most important thing, money is the only thing that counts. We're going to go back to WrestleMania in a minute, but let's stick with the theme of TKO, not only bleeding fans dry, but also gaslighting fans and investors into believing that they actually need to be hiking up all these prices and collecting ever-swelling site fees for WWE events because reasons, I guess. TKO COO Mark Shapiro made an appearance at the Goldman Sachs Communicopia and Technology Conference. Aside from claiming that WrestlePalooza, possibly the stupidest name for a WWE PLE since Great Balls of Fire, and yes, I know WrestlePalooza was an ECW name, but it was a stupid name back in '98 as well, I mean, for my money. But anyway, when asked about wrestler and fighter pay also for UFC, Shapiro kind of laughingly claimed the following. So Shapiro said that TKO run a pretty lean cost structure, lean for maybe the fighters and wrestlers, I guess. The fighter and wrestler pay is part of, but they will continue to do right by our fighters and our WWE superstars. We're going to share as much as makes sense with the stars of both leagues. Now, that's a very, very nebulous term that I'm going to be making mention of in a minute. We will be very competitive. We are very competitive. Not really when you're not that competitive when WWE and UFC have like over 90% market share in their chosen genres each. So, I mean, they're not that competitive. We pay more than any other. I mean, that's what the MLW lawsuit was, by the way, that WWE, if not a monopoly, is a monopsony, which basically means they don't have 100% control of the market, but the vast controlling share, basically, and that they're using it to drive down or drive up prices or basically drive other, smaller companies out via nefarious means. I guess they were complaining like TV rights deals WWE was interfering with. Anyway, We pay more than any other competitor. Well, yeah, in combat sports, we know why we're here, and it's a team effort. That's what Mark Shapiro said. We've got more quotes from him in a minute. At this point, it is worth mentioning, it should be said, that an estimated American sports leagues revenue share, like NFL and the NBA, set aside around 50% of their total revenue for player pay. UFC is more likely under 20%, somewhere in the teens, we think. And WWE is even lower than that, with some estimates figuring that they are actually paying around 10%, or I've heard numbers as high as like 13, 14% of their revenue going to paying the wrestlers, which is far lower than any other sports league, of course. Last year, it was said to be around 55% of AEW's revenue would go to the performers, but since the huge WBD and HBO Max deals, I'm presuming that percentage has dropped significantly. Going back a few months, here's what Mark Shapiro said about WWE tickets and ticket prices. Basically complaining that Vince McMahon actually had a modicum of consideration for his audience. This is what he said, May 13th, 2025. WWE is not where the UFC yet is on ticket yield. We have our work to do there. We know we have a lot of room there because Vince McMahon was primarily pricing tickets for families and wasn't totally focused on maxing the opportunity there. How dare he? Now that we've seen what we can do with the UFC, we're replicating that in terms of ticket yield and holding back in advance sales when it comes to on location. And holding back in advance sales kind of thing. That's like, dynamic pricing, I guess, is going to be included on that when it comes to on location on the WWE side, and it's working out really well. So Mark Shapiro said. So basically, Vince McMahon was keeping WWE ticket prices affordable on purpose. I won't bore you with the numbers, but TKO revenue is rocketing up so much year on year that shares are now topping $200 per share, but this is coming at a high price in terms of fan loyalty and fan perception, in my opinion. Now, this has got even WWE fans nostalgic for a return for Vince McMahon, and they're even, at least Vince McMahon had some boundaries, not, in relationships, obviously, but with how he presented WWE. So even in the late 2010s, yes, the creative was an all-time low, but at least he didn't plaster the ring canvas with all the advertisements and have every WrestleMania match feature a sponsor. He cared about the image of his company far more than TKO do, in my estimation, and he still wanted WWE to be at least, sort of family-run that appealed shockingly to families. And keep in mind, it was Vince McMahon who originally signed the Saudi Arabia deal back in 2018. I know all this, and yet I'm still almost hankering for the days of Vince McMahon, even with the bad creative at this point. Now, getting to a WWE SmackDown event is going to cost you at least $80 for the absolute worst seats, and more like $200 for nosebleed seats for like a premium live event, not including WrestleMania or SummerSlam, I think. So throw in parking and food, a family of four, you're going to be spending like a minimum of $1,000 plus to get the worst seats for a single night out. I know I do some of these videos to talk about how expensive WWE is to be a fan of WWE these days, but I don't think it's talked enough, which is why I keep doing this. And I will get to WrestleMania again in a minute, but few working families have that kind of money to burn on an evening's entertainment, but it clearly isn't a consideration for Mark Shapiro and Nick Khan. And Nick Khan, someone called him a few days ago saying how expensive it was. And Nick was like, yeah, tell me about it. But it's like, it's his fault. And Mark Shapiro's, they're the decision makers, and a few other people. And Ari Emanuel, of course. But anyway, the WWE TKO gang don't care about that. They're trying to raise the prices more. And that was more quotes coming out from that recent place, the Goldman Sachs thing that Mark Shapiro was talking about. They're looking at raising prices even more. Once again, this is a call to WWE fans. If you don't want the prices rising, don't pay them. It might take a couple of years for basically people to get burnt out of paying $200 minimum for a PLE, but more likely for half decency, you're looking at $500 or something like that per seat. It's ridiculous. For a TV show, it's ridiculous. For Raw or SmackDown, not even a PLE. But once again, front row WrestleMania seats are as high as $70,000 for the weekend. Any half decent seat is well into four figures for both nights. And, if you don't live near a major metropolitan area in the States, you'll probably never ever get a chance to see WWE anymore because they've eliminated nearly all domestic house shows and live events, which would be, A shows and B shows where they'd actually visit towns. They wouldn't, have a Raw or SmackDown TV taping, especially a PLE or pay-per-view back in the day. Now, once again, it cost US-based fans $100 or so a month to legally watch WWE programming, and merchandise prices are also skyrocketing because fuck people, why not? Let's just do it. Finn Balor's Demonito thing that he had at the recent AAA show, that puppet, they're selling for $100 US or £100 because apparently conversion rates don't exist for WWE, which really, if you're just going to convert dollars to pounds, it should be £74. WWE are also selling like Mr. Iguana Layeska replicas, the little iguana stuffed toy thing. It looks like what it is, something you'd win out of like a grabber machine at the fair. $60 plus shipping. All examples, I know. But once again, I know you don't have to pay this kind of money, but enough people still are to keep raising the prices. And I think it'll take another year or two to correct. I don't know if it's going to go like UFC or boxing. I think WWE fans are just going to simply stop paying because also in 2025 the creative has been as good as 2023 and 2024, and now it's more expensive than ever, but that's an argument in and of itself. Now, once again, you don't have to spend that money. You can watch the clips online, including on WWE's own YouTube channel and social media, where for reasons only known to themselves, like within hours of broadcast, they post like 1 hour plus highlight shows of the Raw or SmackDown that just aired for free, and it's far more digestible as well. So I don't know why they're doing that. But anyway, the point is that for Vince McMahon, all his glaring faults here, he had at least some kind of sense of corporate responsibility as far as like giving fans, or at least attempting to give fans, value for money. Now, TKO are seeing record profits, incredibly high ticket price hikes recently, even compared to 2 years ago, and site fees as well. And they look at all this and they say to themselves, still not enough. But back to Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Arabian WrestleMania. Once again, we are not completely sure whether it will be a sub-WrestleMania event that carries the WrestleMania name, but is actually in the vein of the Greatest Royal Rumble. But what we do know is that an official announcement is imminent, because we know this because an official announcement in Arabic was already posted and then swiftly deleted. So bear with me, here we go. Earlier today, there was a press release, this is from PW Insider, in Arabic, that WrestleMania 43 will be held in Saudi Arabia 2027, and the press release was yanked shortly after it went out, as apparently it was sent out as an accident, but pwinsider.com can confirm, however, that the story is 100% legitimate, and an announcement is coming very soon, bringing WrestleMania to an international location outside of North America for the first time ever. Oh, Saudi Arabia. Oh, I didn't even realise this. I forgot about this. Saudi Arabia is also hosting the 2026 Royal Rumble, which I guess, if nothing else, is good news for me personally, because it won't be in the middle of the night, so I can watch it live for once. Anyway, so there it is on the thing. Right. I'm sure you remember that the initial event, the Greatest Royal Rumble, that was the first ever Saudi Arabian event. It not only had Titus O'Neil trip and slide entirely underneath the ring, which is an all-time fantastic blooper, but also for a random Japanese sumo wrestler called Hiroki Sumi, who just kind of shambled to the ring and then got eliminated really quickly and then was never seen again. Now, this was because the organisers, and I'm throwing this in as a bit of a fun fact here, the organisers actually requested that Yokozuna appear at the show. I mean, more like he come out of death rather than retirement to be part of the show. Now, this isn't without precedent, if you can believe it or not in wrestling, but in history, because in 987 AD, the Cadaver Synod took place, right? Pope Stephen VI's dead body was exhumed by his enemies, and then it was put on trial. Apparently somebody even stood behind the body and sort of wiggled it around when the judge asked him a question, right? And then he was found guilty of whatever various crimes they decided to find him guilty of. Then he had his fingers amputated so he couldn't do blessings in the afterlife, and then his body was thrown into the Tiber River. So if, they can go to all that trouble for a pope, I'm sure they could get Yokozuna out for one more payday under those circumstances. But it was kind of felt that Yokozuna probably couldn't make it. So any sumo wrestler would apparently do, and they got this guy, and he was never seen again. But if that wasn't embarrassing enough, apparently the Saudi organisers also requested an appearance from the Ultimate Warrior, who died 5 years earlier. Unfortunately, the Renegade was also dead, or they probably would have booked him. Anyway, apparently the Saudi Sports Authority is still in the market for bringing in big-name living former stars, living being the operative word. Not only are they paying out the arse for the events, no doubt, because, I mean, they were getting $50 million WWE per event, pretty much, that wasn't a Royal Rumble or a WrestleMania. So they'll probably pay double, I guess. You know, $100 million is a hard thing to turn down, I guess. But once again, they're making huge money offers, apparently, to former megastars in WWE as well, not including, no, with names not limited to, excuse me, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. And if I was going to throw some names out, Sting, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, they probably even get back, even though Sting and Ric Flair are still with AEW, amazingly. But anyway, let's leave out the money talk here and talk about something that fans will actually probably care more about, and that's the quality of the show, a WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia. Most wrestlers, if it wasn't for the giant payoffs, or at least the big names anyway, would never go, because somewhere between not wanting to make the incredibly long trip, let's not forget, occasionally you might not even leave the tarmac for 24 hours if Vince McMahon and Turkey Al-Sheikh or the Crown Prince, whatever, have some sort of fallout, and you never, and you know, they leave and then leave everybody else on the tarmac to sort of face the music. And then somewhere also between compromising of morals, looking at you, CM Punk, and more, most of the Saudi shows aren't actually very good. Now, Night of Champions this past June, I think, was kind of an outlier. It was actually a pretty decent show, and the fans were sort of more up and more into it than they normally are, because for years, like, the fans weren't that loud, and the guys and girls were really, really tired for the most part. And obviously, you know, the women can't wrestle how they want to wrestle, and they've got to wear, you know, the full body length thing still. And basically, it just comes across, you know, all these exhausted performers and everything. It always came across as like a glorified house show, and the events were really forgettable. Nothing really happened there for the most part. You know, not many titles change hands, for example. And it kind of felt like the UK exclusive pay-per-views back in the early 2000s. So regardless of all the money and everything like that, for the most part, Saudi shows aren't very good for a litany of different reasons as well. So this has got to be one of the least anticipated, in my mind, WrestleManias in living history, quite frankly. But you tell me what you think. But there's one thing I've got to wonder more than anything else is, will New Orleans ever get their WrestleMania moment? It was supposed to be next year and isn't. And it may well not be next year either if Saudi Arabia is only getting, you know, the one WrestleMania of the year and there's not going to be two. But anyway, that's the video. Tell me what you think. Comment under, like and subscribe, algorithm, etc. And I'll see you for the next video.